Hi there, welcome to Kneppy Invest and welcome to another technical update video. It is the 31st of August 2025. Time is 11:16 a.m. This might be, no, not might be. This will be the last technical update video for about 2 and a bit months. So sometime in middle of November will be the next technical update video, and I have a feeling we might see some interesting charts in that particular video. Now, I might do an abbreviated video today just because I want to do a couple of other videos. And I will, at this point in time, I will do an ASX daily rundown video tomorrow, which will be the last one for, again, 2 months. More than likely, we won't see much action on the ASX in terms of interesting announcements. So I also think that would be a shortened video. Now, what I might do in this video is I'll quickly go through all the indices, commodities, Bitcoin. In fact, Bitcoin looks interesting, not for a good reason. Also have a look at bonds, but no individual companies charts in this video. Okay, so let's get stuck into indices. And I think I might go through this fairly quickly. Now, a pretty good week for the XSO or small caps. XJ, in fact, I would also say a pretty good week for the ASX, because if you compare the ASX to international indices, we actually did relatively well. Now, XJO was up slightly, bit of a doji there, up slightly 0.606%. You can see a bit of a doji. So that's, flat. If it's flat and the range from the high to the low is, I wouldn't say a lot, but there is a bit of a range there. But if it's flat, that equals a doji. If you don't believe me, let's just Google doji. Doji. This is one candlestick I do know. There it is. There's a doji. So it's like the long-legged doji, I suppose, sort of like that, where the open and close price finish almost identical. Yeah, that's it. Doji. So this is like a doji, almost like a doji, long-legged doji. And this is actually one of the better candlesticks, weekly candlesticks in the indices in the world, apart from one, which I'll touch upon in a second. Now, if you go back to the daily chart, it looks pretty good. I have no complaints about this daily chart. It's a beautiful daily chart, to be honest with you. No reason to be bearish right now. Absolutely zero reason to be bearish. For those who believe it is significantly overvalued, our markets, you could be saying that for the next 2 years, and the market could keep on going up and up. Now, I'd love to see the XGO get above 9,000 and stay above 9,000. That would be a fairly bullish move. So I'd like to see that over the next week or two. But we'll say at this point in time, 9,000 is a little bit of a resistance level. But a beautiful looking chart for the XJO. And I'm going to say the same thing about the XSO. In fact, I'll say the XSO is even a better looking chart. So a lot of positive action in small caps right now. So this, in my opinion, is even a better looking chart than the XJO. Not only that, this was a stellar week for this particular indice. You don't usually say that, particularly when you're comparing this indice to all the other indices. In fact, look at that weekly performance for the XSO, up 3.06%. And I'm wondering if this is because of some really good financial reports, half-yearly and yearly reports released by small caps during the week. Maybe. I'll have to have a look at that. But there is some reason why small caps had a really good week. Now, in saying that, small caps has been on a tear the last 6 weeks. Broke out of that purple box. When was that? In fact, let's have a closer look. That was on the week of the 14th of July. Broke above that purple box and has been on a tear since then. And this is a beautiful looking chart. A beautiful looking chart. Now, we don't want to see it go exponentially. I'm just thinking if you see a chart going exponentially, particularly when it comes to an individual company, that is a time to become a little bit wary. And this is, I wouldn't say it's showing signs of that, but yeah, there's something to be just a little bit mindful of when you look at the weekly chart. But if you go back to the daily chart, this is an absolutely gorgeous chart. Absolutely gorgeous chart for the XSO. In fact, this would be my favorite indice chart right now, the XSO. I can't believe I'm saying that, because I've actually badmouthed the XSO quite a few times over the past few months. In fact, on occasion I've mentioned and thought maybe I shouldn't even look at this one. Anyway, what about the XTL? We go back to the weekly chart. What happened with the ASX 20? Down slightly, down 0.24%. Still looks okay. Now, this was after 3 or 4 up weeks, so you're going to see on occasion a down week. This does not mean this is the end of the bull run for the XTL or whatever. It's just a normal down week you usually see in uptrends. Daily chart, yet still an uptrend. And look at that. Look at this daily chart and look at all these down days. Plenty of down days, but the up days, a little bit more of those. And typically, when you're in an uptrend, the up day is a little bit better. So maybe instead of up 0.3%, they're up 0.4 or 5%. And when you have a down day, it might be down 0.3%. So that is what is happening with the XTL right now. Plenty of down days, but a little bit more up days, and those up days are better. In fact, you can see that. There was a really good day up 1.43%. And down days 1.05%, 1.06%. There was an up day here by 1.17% and 1.57%. So the good days are a little bit better than the bad days in terms of absolute value, I suppose. Okay, so no complaints about the XTL. What about tech? Go back to the weekly chart for tech. And tech, another bit of a doji here. In fact, this was down slightly, down 0.01%. So we'll say flat for the week. And that's a classic doji, isn't it? And if we have a look at the week daily chart, did end the week positively, up 1.75% after 2 negative days. This is not as good as some of those other indices we've already seen. I like to see some little bit more. I like to see the XTX go on a bit of a run and get to a new high, but still looking good. No complaints about this one either. And what about the banking sector? XBK. Well, it's the ASX 200 banks, and that means there's 7 banks within this particular indice. And for the week, down 0.83%. So one of the worst performing indices are in Australia or on the ASX. And fairly volatile week. There was a really bad day on Monday, down 1.54%. Pretty good day on Thursday, up 1.7%. And it fell 1.1% on Friday. Daily chart looks okay. Got to a high last week and is right on that high. Well, it's struggling to get above that high. So you could actually put a little bit of a resistance right there, but it's, it's a short resistance level. There we go. We'll put it in there. We'll keep it there and see when it breaks through that level. And finally, to commodities. I have a feeling, and the reason I'm saying this is because I did go through indices, commodities earlier, and there are 2 markets that actually did relatively better than other markets, and that's Australia and Canada. And I'm wondering if that's because of mining. So let's have a look at the XMM. Was this a great week for mining? I have a feeling it would be. And let's confirm that. And yes, in fact, the XMM up 2.92%. And this is a pretty good weekly chart. Broke out of the downtrend, fairly, we'll say a medium-term downtrend, back in the middle of July, and has been going on a bit of a tear since then. And we'll look at some of the commodity charts as we move into this video. So like in a minute or so. Well, maybe 5 minutes or so. And there are a few really interesting commodity charts, in particular gold. Gold and silver are really good, looking really good right now. A daily chart for mining, and this actually daily chart is looking really good. I love this daily chart. You can see it breaking out back in the middle of July, went on a big tear, then pulled back, pretty stark pullback, hit the downtrend line, which is now support, and has just gone a run since then. So this is a great looking chart. In fact, if this was an individual company, I'd be buying it. I'd be trading this right now. This would be in my trading portfolio because I like how much, that shows you how much I like this chart for the XMM. The one thing missing, of course, is volume. Anyway, so maybe the volume would have deterred me if it was really weak volume, but otherwise, a beautiful chart for the XMM. And mining is having a pretty good week and a pretty good period, pretty good month and a half. 2 months. Wait, yeah, month and a half. Okay, now on to New Zealand. New Zealand actually did finish up on Friday, but for the week, down 0.86%. And in fact, it's hit that purple box and has pulled lower. So that purple box is still acting as a bit of resistance for the NZX50. And in fact, it broke above or into that box last Thursday. Yep, last Thursday, 21st. And then on Friday, pulled lower and has stayed below that purple box during the rest of the week. Anyway, so that's New Zealand. What about the Americans? Fairly negative end to the week. I think it was it last week? It was a pretty positive end to the week. So I thought we're going to have a pretty good start to our week, and that did not transpire. So I'm thinking we're going to have a negative day on Monday, but just because that happened. That's how it happened on Wall Street on Friday. It doesn't necessarily mean that is going to translate to our market. There is correlation between Wall Street and our market, but doesn't always mean it's an absolute correlation, if that makes sense. Okay, so NASDAQ down 1.22% on Friday, and for the week down 0.35%. So it's really the Friday session that sent the NASDAQ down, but it's coming off all-time highs a few weeks ago. And again, the weekly chart looks pretty good, and the daily chart looks fine. Well, there's the one little thing you might say, negative thing you might say about the NASDAQ. It did get to an all-time high on the 13th of August, so that's almost 3 weeks ago. Tried to get to a new high on Thursday, and a little bit of pullback on Friday. So is this, with the lack of new higher high, is this sort of an indication that we're near the top? Is this an indication that the uptrend is coming to an end? Who knows? We'll have to get a bit of confirmation for that. But if the NASDAQ gets above 24,000, that would be a new high, and that would be fairly bullish, and that could happen in the next week or two. But again, overall for the week, down. And what about the Dow Jones? I have a feeling this was down as well. Oh, slightly down, 0.19%. After breaking out last week. Yes, so broke out last Friday, a really good day, up 1.89%, and sort of went sideways for the rest of the week or the next week, down a little bit on Monday, and 3 nice little days before slight weakness on the Friday. But overall, if you have a look at the daily chart here, it's still looking pretty good. No complaints about this, particularly with a breakout just happening. And typically when I do see a breakout like this, I would expect a little bit of weakness initially, because for some reason, psychology means people don't like when something's at an all-time high. Oh, it's an all-time high, got to sell. But in fact, I would say if you just bought companies at an all-time highs, I don't know how you'd do this, you'd probably significantly beat the market, because if a company keeps getting all-time highs, it's in a really good uptrend, and don't you want to be holding those sort of companies? So I don't understand this belief, this thought, you have to sell when it's an all-time high. So anything. Anyway, that's weird. In fact, I also heard another strategy, not a strategy, but someone told me once, this was many, many years ago, never buy companies or something like this whose share price is at a 52-week low. Yeah, so they use that strategy or something. I'm not even sure they use that strategy or use that as a strategy, but maybe that was one of their rules. Never buy a company that's at a 52-week low. Anyway, so Dow Jones looks okay. What about the Russell 2000? So a pretty good week for small caps on the ASX. What about small caps in the United States? Ended down 0.5% on a Friday. And for the week, it's a pretty good week here. No, only up 0.11%. So small caps had a good week in Australia. It looks like small caps had a relatively good week in the United States as well. Now, the weekly chart is like meh, and the daily chart is actually looking pretty good as well. So the weekly chart, meh, but the daily chart looks good. Okay, so that's the Americans. What about other international indices? We'll start off with the Nikkei. And the Nikkei, after a nice little breakout 3 weeks ago, a couple of slightly negative weeks. In fact, this was positive. Nikkei was positive, even though there's a red candlestick there. Sometimes you see that. And the main reason we see that is because it finished higher at the end of this week than it closed at the end of last week. But the reason it's red is because when it opened on Monday, it was higher than when it closed on Friday. So slight different in timings there, which is why you see red instead of green, even though it's up for the week. That sort of makes sense. So up for the week. And if we have a look at the daily charts here, and you go back to Monday, so Monday, it opened up about 0.4% higher. Maybe even more than that. Then it closed the previous day. That is why you get a red candlestick, even though it's up for the week. Anyway, so daily chart looks fine. In fact, this daily chart looks pretty good because we had the breakout back on the 12th of August. It kept going higher, and then we've seen the pullback, and it looks like at this point that it's pulled back to not only that breakout level, but also the 25-day moving average, and maybe we're starting to see it go up again. So I'd like to see this continue to go up and get to a new high within the next week or so. So Nikkei is looking okay. What about the Hang Seng? Back to the weekly chart. down 1.03% for the week. Weekly chart still looks fine. In fact, Hang Seng got to a long-term high during the week, but a little bit of weakness in the last part of the week, yeah. So on Wednesday, was down 1.27%. And because of the really good session on Friday, a lot of these Asian markets opened up on Monday, just like the Nikkei. So I probably should have mentioned that. And you can actually see that on the Hang Seng. It opened up fairly high on the Monday, and that was the peak. That was the high for the week. And we have seen a little bit of weakness come in during the rest of the week, but still did get to an all-time high during the week. What about the DAX and FTSE? I would assume these are down. Yep. DAX down 1.89% for the week. Has found a bit of resistance at about 24,500. And you can definitely see that with the daily chart. Yeah, look at that. It sort of moved to that level back in June. Try to get above that level at start of July. And again, try to get above that level in the middle of August and has failed. And we have seen a few higher lows. So this could be like an ascending triangle. Let's do that. Let's put one in. We'll put one in like that. It's like an ascending triangle. So when I see these sort of patterns, what I would be waiting for is a breakout either above or below. Now we saw this with, was it gold? We saw a descending triangle and it broke below, but it has rallied back up to the what do you call it? Horizontal line. Anyway, so DAX not as strong as it was. Not my favorite chart among the indices, but still looking okay. And the FTSE, in fact, FTSE was looking better. So let's see if that is true again. Although for the week, FTSE was down 1.44%, and it was looking really good last week. So this is actually a really nice looking chart, by the way. Go all the way back. It's been looking good for quite a few years. And daily chart for the FTSE. This is another case where the high was last Friday. They must not have had trading on Monday. So Monday must have been a public holiday. Did not know that. There we go. And in fact, every single day was down. Tuesday down 0.6, Wednesday 0.11% down, Thursday down 0.42%, and Friday down 0.32%. And saying all that, it still looks good. I have no complaints about this one. And we see these sort of scenarios happen all the time. In fact, we saw the FTSE go down a fair bit back in June, middle of June, and then rallied again. So these sort of little short-term dips are fine. No need to get worried. And finally to the TSX, which was probably the better performing index out of most we have seen. In fact, this one is looking so bullish. It just keeps going up, the TSX. Who would have thought the Canadians or the Canadian indices are doing the best? Up 0.82% for the week. It's had 4 really good weeks in a row after a little bit of a negative week at the end of July. And really, in fact, it's had a few negative weeks since the start of April, but gee, it's gone on a really nice rally since then. In fact, if you have a look at it, it's gone up 20%. 10, 20, 40, yeah, about 20%. Actually, more than 20%, probably about 22% since the bottoms in early April. If you have a look at the daily chart for the TSX, in fact, finished higher on Friday. So there is an argument, just because of this, the TSX up 0.46%. When the NASDAQ was down, Dow Jones was down, there's a chance we could be up just because of mining. Maybe mining will save us. Yep, so TSX chart looks brilliant. In fact, it looks better than most of the Australian indices. Okay, now on to some commodities. Gold. Oh, this one's good. This one's interesting. Wouldn't say gold. It wasn't gold that was in the... trying to remember who it was. Sort of could put, no, not really, no, maybe there. I know. So why is gold looking really interesting? 3,440 is, or around this level, is a really important resistance, we'll say zone, resistance zone. Now, I don't really consider a particular price to be a resistance. I think a resistance is a bit more like a zone. And hopefully you can understand why this price is, or this zone is resistance. As gold got up to this level back in April and pulled lower. Retested again in May and then failed to get through. Retested again in middle of June, failed to get through. Retested again in sort of like the 22nd of July or so and failed to get through. And right now, it's right on that zone right now after a nice little rally. In fact, pretty good week for gold, up 2.24% for the week. It has briefly got above there on Friday, so it is above there right now. Now, the last few times we've seen a really nice one-day candlestick get up to that level. You can see the next day it pulled lower, so that happens 4 times. So will fifth time be the charm for gold, and will we see this breaking out above 3,440? I'm bullish. I'm bullish on gold right now. So that is looking pretty good, looking really good for gold. Same thing can be said for silver. I like this chart as well. In fact, maybe even better because it did break out above the previous highs back on the 23rd of July, and a really good end to the week for silver as well. Up, what was that, 2.57? Yeah, 2.57% on Friday, and for the week, a pretty good week, up 4.27%. And this weekly chart looks pretty fantastic as well. So liking silver and gold. Pick your poison out of all these. What's a good silver company? I'm not going to say good silver company, but for some reason, Andean silver comes to mind. Let's see what this is looking like. It's looking fine. What else is there? SVL. Is that Silver Mines? How are these looking? There's not many gold or silver producers on the ASX. In fact, I believe, is Adriatic in a trading hold? Am I right? I could be completely wrong. Well, I could be thinking of another company. You know. Ah. ADT. Right there. Yeah, so there it is. Yeah, so it's pointless. There was a takeover bid for Adriatic, and their last trading day was 28th of August. So I don't know why I remember this. Suspension from quotation. Is this because of the takeover? Yeah, proposed to facilitate the proposed takeover. Okay. I'm trying to think of more. Maybe someone will say South 32. I prefer to play pure plays, not South 32. But South 32. Just let me have a look. Silver? I don't know. Illuminate, maybe. Yeah, produces silver. Yeah. I have heard some people say, well, maybe South 32 could be a silver play, but for me, it's more about the pure plays. Now, some of those companies I've mentioned, and in silver mines, I think most of those are, what do you call it? Are explorers, not in production. I'm trying to think of the one company that has recently gone to production, and I think is it Polymetals, Polymetals Resources. Has this recently gone to production? An Australian silver zinc producer. Yeah, there we go. So maybe this is a potential Polymetals. Let's have a look at the chart for this one. Hopefully this chart looks pretty good. Oh no, it's been going sideways. Interesting. Maybe because of zinc. In fact, I won't have a look at zinc prices. Okay, so gold and silver looking fantastic. I do haven't gone through all the gold charts. I'm going to have a look at gold charts because I would assume a lot of gold companies' charts are looking fantastic. What about Newmont? This would be the biggest gold company. Oh, gee, that chart looks... Wow, that's gone on a bit of a tear. What about Northern Star? This one was looking weak not that long ago. They issued something negative, and you can see share price diving. Now it's starting to recover. What about Capricorn Metals? There's so many you could talk about here. Capricorn Metals looks pretty good. What about Regis? Oh, that's pulled back a little bit. What about Ramelius? Oh, I'm going to miss so many. Oh, that looks looking pretty nice as well. Okay, let's move on to copper. So before we move on to copper, yes, I love gold and silver right now. Love them, mainly because of the chart. It's just because of the chart. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future. I have no idea. I do know there's gold bugs and those sort of people who think gold's going to go significantly higher in the future. I am not, and I would never be that confident to make that sort of suggestion. Now onto copper. And a little bit of a rise during the week. In fact, if we have a look at copper, up 2.95% for the week. So that's a nice little rally, but otherwise, because of that massive drop, not as much interest in copper as I do have in gold and silver. Okay, on to iron ore. And yeah, I'm neither positive nor negative about iron ore. In saying all that, I don't mind BHP. I don't mind BHP's chart. It's a nice looking chart for BHP. And I think the other charts, Fortescue Metal, it was looking okay, still looking okay. And funny enough, Rio Tinto is the weakest of these three. I'm not sure if that's weird or interesting or just the way it goes. Definitely the weakest of all three. I would actually say you could actually put a bit of a downtrend line for Rio Tinto, somewhere like that. And if it breaks above that, that'd be nice. Some of the smaller plays like Phoenix and Green Resources not looking as good. In fact, Phoenix pulled back a fair bit. Looks like it was breaking out and has pulled back. And Green Resources, I think it's just costs. Their cost to produce iron ore is actually, is that right? That's the wrong one. I'm going to say that's not right. Grange Resources. There we go. That's better. Maybe the bottom has been reached for Grange Resources as well. There you go. Uranium is looking good as well. I like this one as well. So I like gold, silver. Iron ore is looking maybe interesting, maybe. But uranium's looking good as well. Nice little, I wouldn't call this a cup and handle just yet, but has the potential to be. A breakout back in June, a little bit of a dip, sort of like we saw with mining. Bit of a dip in early July, and it's sort of turning around again. So I do like this particular chart. I did go through a few uranium companies' charts in yesterday's answer and reply video, so I won't do it in today's video. Maybe we could do a few more. Let's have a look at Palladium. Don't think I looked at this one yesterday. Palladium. I think this has a potential of maybe turning upwards. It was in a downtrend, and now I think it's showing signs of turning more positive. What else? What about Bannerman? Nah, not for me. Not for me, this one. What else is there? And my favorite, Peninsula. Although Peninsula did do that couple raising during the week and the share price just collapsed like a rock. And this is one of the worst looking charts you'll ever see. But maybe now's the time to buy. Maybe the low is in for Peninsula, but I would have maybe said that a while ago as well. Oil, sometimes I don't even know why I look at oil. What's there to talk about? There's no excitement in oil whatsoever. Anyway, and by the way, if oil just goes on a massive tear in doubles from here, I think the economies are going to be smashed. So, in fact, higher oil prices are not good for the economy. So, you could maybe play as a hedge, but I don't know why you'll do that. But anyway, what else do we have here? Lithium. According to this, lithium hydroxide went up 11.4%. I then had a look at the lithium prices. Lithium charts, trading economics. And this one doesn't have that massive pop-up. But definitely, lithium's looking possibly a little bit better. So maybe, but if you have a look at the 5-year chart, this little rise is just like a little blip, just a little blip. But in saying all that, Pilbara was up, was it 9% on 6.5% on Friday? This is a chart. So I do own some Pilbara right now. I'm not trading it as per se in the short term. This is more of a medium to longer term. So it's in my super. So I just think there is a chance that we're starting to see a little bit of action in lithium. So this is the one of the plays I have made in the lithium space. And the chart does actually look pretty good. I do like this chart for Pilbara. What else could you look at? What about SYA Sayona? I think someone mentioned me this one a few weeks ago. This one looks like it could be turning positive as well. Sayona. And what else? Core Lithium, maybe Core Lithium. Oh, they did a capital raise, didn't they? Yeah, that's why the share price dropped. I'm pretty sure they did capital raise. I'm pretty sure they did a capital raise. They released an interesting announcement. Equity raising presentation. They released a really interesting announcement. I can't remember when, but I'll be able to tell you right now. On the 14th of May, you can see massive volume coming in. The share price popped up. I think that was a sort of indication that the bottom has been reached for core lithium. And the share price actually is in an uptrend right now. And now could be the time to buy at just above 10 cents for core lithium. What else? What other charts can we look at? Coal. Nah. I do have a few coal trades as well. We have seen a little bit of pullback recently, but not interested in coal. And some of the other commodities, I don't have much interest at this point. Tin, maybe? Nickel. Well, nickel's interesting, this chart for nickel, because we had these little dots, and now we're going to candlesticks. Finally, candlesticks for nickel. And what about palladium? The pullback keeps on going for palladium, just keeps on going. Okay, now onto crypto and Bitcoin. Dropped below 100, this little level. What level was that? About 110,000? It's dropped below 110,000. I don't really follow Bitcoin chart all that much, but this pullback has gone a little bit longer than I might have assumed. That's bad to say, assume, but it's gone a little bit longer than I would have liked, put it that way. I was hoping it would have bounced. Now, if I was following this closely, I would have hoped it bounced back in like the start of the week, but it hasn't really. In fact, on Friday, it fell 3.75% and below that. So a little bit of weakness in Bitcoin right now. And is the same thing true for Ethereum? Because Ethereum was looking really good. Ethereum got very close to breaking it above 4,800 this time last week and failed to do so. In fact, on Monday, it fell 8.4%. So a little bit of weakness at 4,800. That was a potential breakout. And we now have seen Ethereum get to this level twice in the past few weeks and failed to get through. I would imagine it will get through in the next 2 weeks just by looking at this. But a bit of weakness in the Bitcoin, maybe that could pull Ethereum below. Or maybe that would mean there's a little bit less enthusiasm in crypto, which could be negative for Ethereum breaking above 4,800. Maybe. We'll wait and see. Bonds just doing what they're doing. Bonds are just staying below 5,000, no downtrend. In fact, I might even say there's not much of a trend right now with bonds. So up on Friday by 1.1%. And just been going sideways for about 2 weeks. And finally, the Aussie dollar, up above 65 cents again. I was going to convert some US currency to US dollars yesterday, and maybe now's I don't know. I was going to say maybe now's a good time to do it. Yeah, I have no confidence which way this is going to go, either up or down. Might just go sideways from here. Okay, so that's it for this particular technical update video. If you have any questions, any thoughts, leave those in the comment section of this video. Otherwise, I'm not a financial advisor. If you need financial advice, make sure you seek out someone who is qualified and can speak to your own financial needs. That's it for the video. Have a good day. Bye.